with the number one oos. My number one oos, Eduardo Encina. Is that a Macho Man t-shirt?
Yeah, it is.
Can
I'm trying
you,
to
I
get it
mean,
in. Like my
it,
frame is all screwy today.
no, but I mean, listen, I may have problems, but I only saw the upper line and the color of your shirt, and I knew it was a Macho Man. I have a problem. If there is an AA for wrestling fans, I would definitely be the first one to sign up. How we doing, Eddie, in the yard? Eddie on the ice?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. Morning skate today. We'll start with the power play because I just mentioned it. I've been saying it to you, to Eric, to everybody. Please put Darren Radish there. Please put him there so we can shoot the puck. If he's aggressive, I said it earlier on the show, if he's aggressive, I think this opens up the power play. At what point, Ed, do you think they just looked at it and said, all right, what we're doing is not enough? Did you see it? I think we saw it the other night, right, when they put Hedman back on there. But, I mean, if you're going to have Radish or Chafee, and that one-timer he took the other night didn't look too great, I think they go back to what they tried to do originally in this, in the season and have those five guys out there.
Yeah, I think that at the end of the day, you need both sides to be a threat, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's funny. I was at practice yesterday. I was watching Mitchell Chafee do one timers, and you can see the difference, right? But just because we saw this tonight, I don't necessarily think that it's going to be a necessarily a long-term fix. I think that as it's been all year, this has been a constantly evolving thing with the power play. And one thing that's at hand right now is maybe you do want to mix it up because of who you're facing. You're facing the Ottawa Senators for the second straight game. It's almost like a lot of guys have talked about this in the room of like how this feels a little bit like a playoff series, and not just from the perspective of that. There's my puppy there. You see my dog?
Hey,
He's right there. Hey, there's Raleigh Bow. And
Raleigh.
so,
That's great.
Hey Raleigh.
Just chilling. Stay there, no
chilling.
problem.
And so,
Raleigh threw you off, brother.
Not just are these teams close together in the standings, but
Mm-hmm.
this does have kind of a playoff feel to it, and in the playoffs, game to game, teams adjust. So I think you'll see both teams adjust a little bit. I think that might be a little bit of what's going on with the power play, but for sure, there's no doubt that Darren Radish has a hell of a shot from that side, through that right-handed one-timer that we haven't seen since number 91 left. And I think early on he was a little hesitant to do that, to unleash that shot, because he was on a power play with all these other guys who are bona fide superstars. Now, I think over the course of the season, we've seen more 5-on-5 time from Darren Radish since JJ Mosier got hurt. And I think he's confident in his all-around game more. I think now you put him in there, you're going to see a different guy. And I think that's what we're going to see when you put Radish out there. I think you're going to see him, really kind of establish himself. And it doesn't need to be a thing where he scores when he shoots that shot. It just needs to be something that the penalty kill has to account for. And
right.
We've seen Alex Ovechkin, I don't know how many times he just pounds you, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of them, they're going to go in, right? But his strategy is more, I'm going to punish you guys with this shot. And Radish has that kind of shot. And if we see a little bit more of that, I think that we'll see a little bit more rejuvenation to the power play. And this is something that's, I think we're going to see this all year long. And this is one of those changes that we might see tonight. So yeah, I mean, it's the power play's been one of these narratives all year long that has been up and down. What were they, 0-12, I think, before they scored a goal in the last game. And there's not a hesitation by anyone, whether it's Cooper or Jeff Halpern, who works with the power play, to really kind of figure all this, to try different things, to try to find something that works, and then go with it until it doesn't work anymore, and then you try something else.
I'm going to put $10 on each one of those five guys to score a power play goal tonight. just because I have such belief in it, because when you look at different power plays, other power plays, they're about player movement. The Lightning are about puck movement. They stay in the same spot the entire time. So I know some people are like, I can't believe you'd have this antiquated way of thinking of having two defensemen out there like it was, 10, 15, 20 years ago and beyond. But they don't move. Like, they just stand there. And if Darren Radish has the best slap shot from the right side, put his ass right there and just make sure. And that's why it's one of the biggest things I'm going to be watching for tonight. Is just like, if he's aggressive, I think it opens everything up. If he's passing that puck, it doesn't even matter who's over there. You just put a cone. It doesn't matter. But now you put Point in his spot, you Gensel, Kucherov, Hedman. I got high hopes for it. Any concern from you about Anthony Cirelli not being in the lineup tonight? We saw the lines jumbled up a little bit. Good sign that Nick Paul's going to be in there, but no Tough Tony, and we know how tough he is. He's been battling this for the last little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it a number of times in the past probably 3-4 weeks that Anthony's missed, had maintenance days, hasn't skated sometimes, had some practice days that he's been off. So he's definitely dealing with something that he's been dealing with for a while here. Obviously, there's no keeping him out of games, because we saw that in the last game where I think he missed 3 minutes of the second, was on the bench, came back 3 minutes into the third, and finished off the game. So, but that's the matchup line, right? So we know how well him and Hagel work together. I think that's going to be a big thing to watch tonight. Who kind of slots in there? We saw Jake Gensel in the center spot on that second line in skate. That's an unfamiliar spot for him, but he certainly has the two-way game to be a guy who can fill those shoes to a certain degree. So, but I mean, there's the question of where's Anthony Cirelli, this weekend, and then there's the question of where's Anthony Cirelli next week when he's supposed to be playing for Team Canada in the Four Nations. So the good thing is we could ask John Cooper both of those questions. and again, like, I think it's day to day right now. These are important games, so he wants to be out there. They want him out there. And then there's the Four Nations aspect to it. Cooper was like, "Let's not talk about Four Nations yet. Let's get through these three games, and then we'll talk about that a little bit later." But knowing Anthony Cirelli the way I do, I think that it would be very odd to see him miss all three of these games before the break.
Do you think so? Then, if that's the case, then you probably think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, that he will play for Team Canada. But is it smart? I guess that's the better question, because we know him, right? We know how tough the guy is. He's tough as nails to go against the other team. But looking at it objectively and saying he's not a guy that plays on the periphery. This is not a guy that's like, oh, you know what? You go get the puck. He plays a tough game. He plays a rambunctious game. And the reason why he's on Team Canada is to go against the Austin Matthews of the world, the Forsberg and the Zibanejads and the Barkovs of the world. Like, he's going to be tasked with, just like he is with the Bolts, going against the other team's best player. Is it wise that he plays for Team Canada if he has a nagging injury? Right? It's a fair question. I know you and I are like, I don't know, but I mean, like, I think the answer is I would say no, it's not smart, but we know how much this tournament means, even for people on the outside. It's like, oh, it's a glorified exhibition. I'm one of them. But this means a lot to him. And I know it means a lot to him to make this team and to play on this team, and Coop and JBB. But it's got to be weird for them too, because they realize that, like, hey, are we sacrificing our most important defensive forward for an exhibition tournament when that could cripple us down the stretch as we try to get another cup?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, they're in a tough situation as decision makers for that, because obviously, like you said, he plays a very physical game. It's one that it's physically demanding. And for him to do it the right way, he takes a beating, he gives a beating. So it's, like I said, it's not around the edges at all. He's on everyone. So I don't know. I really don't know how to answer that question, because there's the we know that these guys deal with stuff all the time physically, right? And only at the end of the season do we really hear about how banged up guys are. Right. When Julian reads off that list of, like, this guy had a broken thumb, this guy had a pin in his knee, this guy,
CVS receipt, right?
Right. Yeah. So yeah, basically it's a CVS receipt without the coupons. So and then when you add in and yes, it's the Four Nations, it's not the Olympics, but still representing Team Canada for all of these guys means a whole heck of a lot. And I asked Cooper this when I sat down with him about maybe some people in America don't really understand that, like how much that really means. And he had some pretty interesting. I will be writing that story next week, so I won't give you everything. But just how much it kind of means from everyone involved in Hockey Canada to play in this. So you're weighing so many different things, right? And just the premise that guys do play through a lot of things, whether it's Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final or game 53, 54 of the regular season. So without knowing too much about what his specific injury is, it's hard really to tell.
Yeah, I'm glad you just said that, because one thing that I was able to take away from the fireside chat with Julian was how much it meant to him. Like he kind of sat up in his seat a little bit. He perked up when he was talking about it,
Yeah.
and you felt the emotion. You felt that there was a lot of like weight to the decision-making process, and getting to know these other general managers and watching these games and traveling across the continent to make sure that he was making the right decision. You want to talk about people that take things lightly? Julian Breezewell was on the other end of the spectrum. Like he was just like, and I don't want to say he was like serious where it was like awkward, but it was just, you could feel the passion. And I don't know if people in the States, as you just alluded to, like really get that. And they'll say, oh, it's a glorified exhibition, but this is their sport. Like this is what hockey, I mean, is everything to Canadians. And if they have an opportunity to put their sport on display for the world in a best on best competition, I mean, they're trying to win this damn thing, right? Like they're not going like, hey, we're here to participate. Like they're here to dominate. They're trying to win. And
right.
Especially after what just happened at the World Juniors, where they didn't even medal, like that's embarrassing for them. If the US doesn't medal in the World Juniors, it's like, whatever. It's the juniors, but if Canada doesn't medal in the World Juniors, it's like, fire alarms going off. Like, we got to fire this guy. We got to get rid of this guy. We got to figure out a way to get this right. And this is a way to almost atone for that if they win the Four Nations. I want to ask you about some of the guys in the middle six. Well, actually, let's start here. Conor Geekie getting sent down. Any surprise there of him getting sent down? And what do you think it'll take for him to get called back up?
Yeah, I think that, just from talking to Conor, I think he was pretty kind of honest about how, there is a physical and mental toll that reaches a young player at this time of the year. And I think he was dealing with all of that, and knowing that, the Lightning can tell him, you've exceeded expectations. We didn't expect you to be here. So everything you've done here has been, just icing on top of the cake.
Right.
But the player himself puts a great amount of pressure on himself to perform. And I know Conor Geekie is one of those guys, and I think that he got into his own head a little bit, but I do think that as he wasn't seeing results, and he probably hit a little bit of a physical fatigue wall as well, that it kind of cratered a little bit for him. And his numbers the past few games before he got sent down probably showed that. Because that's not the player that we saw in the beginning of the year, and it's certainly not the player that I think that he's going to be. He's going to be that dominating top six centerman who can play both ways and do a lot of things. So I think that sometimes you've got to slow it down, get a guy back down in an environment that maybe there's a little bit less pressure, and he can kind of slow his game down, slow his mind down, rest up, get his body right and his mind right in a lot of ways. And I think it's only a matter of time before we see him again, and in a big role for this team. So, was I surprised? A little bit, but not really. I think that when you see, especially where this team's at right now, which is in a major need of points, it's not, this isn't, if this isn't, November where you're saying, we got one, that's great. They need points, and especially against the teams they're playing against. It's huge like the other night that they got two, and that and more importantly,
they got none. Yeah.
And it's the same to be the same thing tonight. It's going to be the same thing Saturday night in Detroit, and to an extent, on Sunday in Montreal. So this is kind of, backs against the wall time, to use, a phrase, is they've got to this isn't the time to really develop a 20-year-old guy through his struggles at the NHL level. They've got to win gemes. They've got to get points.
Conor Geekie gets called up. You think this is just kind of a 3-game thing for him? Because I think deals are going to be made soon. I said yesterday with our buddy Eric Erlinson, I think they need to call Isaac Howard up as soon as the college season is done. I was surprised that Eric agreed with me, but it seems like he can step in. I'd rather see him out there than a Gonzalez or a Chaffee. Hell, I'd rather see, I might want to see Raleigh out there more than I'd rather see Raleigh out there than Chaffee Gonzalez sometimes. But yeah, I mean, Conor Geekie, I mean, you're going to give him another opportunity here. What do you expect to see from him tonight? Because looking at some of the lines from morning skate, it looks kind of crazy.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna get rolling on skates pretty soon, so
Nice.
we might get him out there. But
Love that.
yeah, with Geekie, I think it's a situation where right now with especially with the forwards, you've got to find what you've got right now. Is Conor Geekie a guy? You got to answer the question: is Conor Geekie a guy that can help you down the road? And you've got to evaluate that to a certain extent. We've seen Gates Goncalves on the first line in the past in a few times. So I think some of the things that we're seeing here is like a little bit of while you're needing these points at the same time, like we said, is trying to figure out where some of these younger guys fit in. And I'm on the Isaac Howard train too. I mean, I'm conducting it with the so there's help down the road, I think. But right now you've got to figure out what you've got to and there's been a lot of movement already, but I think Julian is really posed for that right after the Four Nations break to really go at it and really have a good idea of where what the market's like, what's out there, and how maybe some of those possibilities fit. So with Geekie, he's got a great opportunity right now. I mean, he can, obviously his time here has been a massive disappointment. There's no doubt about it. I think he'd probably be the first one to tell you that. But I think going down there, much like it's a different situation, but for a guy who's been in the NHL for years, going down to the AHL, having a more prominent role, being kind of looked at as a guy who has NHL experience, maybe a little bit more of a leadership role. I mean, Conor. I mean, he's not the most outgoing, vocal guy in the world. Right. So I think when stuff, not to use the word crater again, but like when stuff went bad for him, he kind of went into himself a little bit and he couldn't get himself out. So now, you set him up there. More than anything, he comes back with a lot more confidence. And whether that translates on the ice, we'll see. But, this is a guy who, you paid a good deal of money for.
Yeah. Multi-year deal.
Yeah. Right. And you want to see if he can help you. Also if maybe someone else wants him too,
Yeah. You audition the guy a little bit,
right,
for somebody else that thinks that maybe a change of scenery could help. I like that a lot. What do you got coming up on Tampa Bay Times, tampabay.com/sports? I know you got the story coming up with Coop.
Yeah, so we've got in today's paper, a really cool story I thought on Brandon Halverson, the backup goaltender at the Lightning, just called up, and the story that he has just an amazing story. He was a second-round pick by the Rangers in 2014, played one game in 2018 in the NHL in relief of Henrik Lundqvist, and since then, just kind of injuries, bad breaks. He was out of pro hockey for a couple of years. He was actually working on the Pepin family farm in Tampa for a while, basically doing odd jobs. He had to sell his car. He was doing, before then he was doing Uber Eats and stuff like that. So he basically was able to get he tried out for the Orlando team, the CHL team, that's the Lightning affiliate. He made it, but then he got cut. The next year, he went to the coach and said, "Can I have another chance?" They gave him a chance. He signed a contract with them. And ECHL contracts are like day to day. Like you can cut a guy at any time. And they signed him for $600 a week. And he ran with it. And before you know it, he credits a lot of his goaltending coaches who really, a couple guys who, he needed someone to believe in him at that point. And he got a couple of goaltending coaches who did in the Lightning system. So, and he's run with it. And now he was an AHL All-Star this past, just named very recently. And, who knows? He's on the roster now because Jonas Johansson's hurt. What's going to be interesting now is what they do with this weekend series.
Right.
Typically a back-to-back, you have Vasilevsky play one game and the backup play another game. But because Vasilevsky's going to have about a week and a half, 2 weeks off, do you ride Vasi for both of those games of that back-to-back? I asked Cooper about that today. He was in a very day-to-day mode, so he did not want to answer that. But that's a really cool story. I'm really happy with the way that came out. And obviously next week with Four Nations coming up, we'll have the Cooper story and a really cool story on Brandon Hagel, who I guess, again, I just love these stories. I mean, we know Hagel's story about, the guy who, was never on World Juniors teams, who, was drafted in the 6th round, wasn't signed, and then now the player that he's become today. And really, you were at the Julian presser where Julian talked about how, for a guy like him, he benefited from the guys around him, right?
Right.
And Brandon talked about it a lot. He was like, listen, if I came to Lightning straight out of juniors, I might not have made it. I might not have been able to crack the lineup. I might have been, Carter Verhaeghe, something like
Marchessault,
And we've seen many of those guys, but he got to Chicago. He got the opportunity to play there. He obviously played with Patrick Kane, learned a great deal from him, and then came here and had a room full of guys he could learn from too. So, and he really credits that a lot for his development, and especially, it seems like so long ago, but when they first traded him, he was on a checking line, right? He was with Cirelli and Alex Killorn, and he talked about how, and we've seen it now for probably both ways, how Cirelli really helped him develop his defensive game and make him into that elite penalty killer that he's become and that elite defender that he's become. And now, again, I think what we see in Brandon Hagel is one of the top, two-way forwards in the game. And he's only 26, 27 right now. So, and I think a lot of people think that this Four Nations tournament is going to be kind of a coming out party for him, because maybe a lot of people haven't really paid that much attention to him, and now they're going to see him on a bigger stage.
Yeah, they better, because he has been fantastic for the Bolts, and it just seems like whoever Anthony Cirelli teams up with over the years, whether it was a Matthew Joseph or Alex Killorn or Brandon Hagel, it speaks volumes of the kind of guy that number 71 is. That's Eddie in the Yard on Twitter /X. Guys, make sure you subscribe to the Tampa Bay Times. I say that every single time we have somebody from the Times on, whether it's Ed or Stroud or Topkin or Colleen Wright, or one day when we get John Romano on. Make sure you subscribe to the Tampa Bay Times. Support local. I can't stress that enough. TampaBay.com, TampaBay.com/sports. I'm reading that thing every single day. Read that Halverson story. It is amazing. Ed, appreciate it. I'm going to be at USF tonight, so I won't see you. So enjoy some time off, and we'll talk next Thursday about all things Tampa Bay Lightning. And be ready, because if it doesn't work on the power play, I feel they're going to ask you to take Radish's spot.
That's not a good idea.
Not a good thing. That's why it's Eddie in the Yard and not Eddie on the ice.
All right, Jay. I'll talk to you later, man.
All right. Thanks, pal.